All right, good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar titled Qualification Process when Using Sustainable Metal Powders for AM in a Production Environment. The webinar today is presented by 6K Additive and Morph 3D and hosted by PMA. My name is Brad Kubin. I'm the editorial director at PMA and I'm pleased to serve as your moderator for today's session. Before we get started, just a few notes about today's go-to meeting. It is being recorded for archiving, and the recorded event will be posted to our website within the next few days. We'll also let you know via email when that recording is available for viewing online and sharing with others. Also, all the participants in this meeting are in listen-only mode, which means that our speakers and other listeners won't be able to hear any audio from your site during the program. However, you can communicate with us throughout the program by submitting any questions or comments you have using the question box, which is located on that right-hand control panel of your go-to screen. You'll simply type your question to an organizer as selected from the drop-down menu. And then you'll use that same question panel to ask questions of our speakers at the end of the presentation. Lastly, I want to let all of you know that there are some handouts available for download within the go-to platform here that 6K and Morph 3D have provided as complimentary to the webinar content. So please, before you log off at the end of the webinar, take a minute to download those handouts. Again, they complement the PowerPoint presentations. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and begin today's webinar. Again, it's focused on sustainability and recycling, which are two words that really have been grabbing headlines in additive manufacturing, and many AM organizations have been looking at ways to incorporate sustainable materials into their production processes. However, there are perhaps some lingering skepticism surrounding the use of sustainable materials, and we know that there are plenty of questions surrounding this topic, so today's webinar is really designed to address those questions for you. Our speakers today, first off is Dr. Behrang Poorganji. He is the Vice President of Materials Technology at Morph 3D, which is a strategic supplier to the aerospace and defense industries. And Behrang will detail for us the qualification of powders made from sustainable sources and highlight some specific requirements in order to satisfy demanding applications and some of these strategic customers. He'll also share some of the material results that Morph 3D has seen from its qualification process and how it enables customers to be more environmentally friendly. And then Dr. Poorganji is joined today by Jamie Perosi. Jamie is the Vice President of Technology at 6K Additive. He graduated from Penn State with a material science and engineering degree and has more than 20 years of experience in the production and application of specialty materials. At 6K Additive, Jamie focuses on process new product development, product management, and application engineering. Prior to working at 6K Additive, he spent 8 years at Amatec Specialty Metal Products in their water atomization facility. All right, so we're going to launch into the presentation, but before we do, we will start with a very brief poll. It's the first of two polls that we have throughout the presentation. So the first poll is, we'd like you to please, in the audience, let us know what industry listed here best represents your company's interests. So go ahead and we'll take a minute or two to fill that out, and then we'll share the results with everybody and introduce our speakers. All right, let's take a look at the results. Aerospace and defense is 28%, other is 39%. So unfortunately, we can't list all of the possible industries that you all serve. Automotive is 14%, so about half as many as aerospace and defense, followed by academia and research, which is 13%, so close to automotive, and then medical is 6%. So thank you for filling out the poll. We'll go ahead now and welcome Dr. Poorganji and then Jamie Perosi. And I guess the first question is, I have for you, Dr. Poorganji, is, are you surprised by those poll results, or did you expect something similar to that?
No, I have not been surprised, and this is a good mix. Can you hear me? Okay, all good.
Yep, sound great. Sound
Okay.
great.
Yep. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for joining this webinar. I have a pleasure to talk to you about the qualification process when basically we're using a sustainable metal powder in a production environment. And I'm pleased to do this webinar together with my friend Jamie. Okay, so maybe before getting into the process, it's better to talk a little bit about our companies. What is Morph 3D and what we are going to do. This is the content of our today webinar. We start with an introduction of the two companies. We'll talk about the material ecosystem in additive manufacturing and how we look at the materials technology ecosystem at Morph 3D. And we go through the qualification process of the 6K nickel alloys. And we'll end with why we think that Morph 3D is the right technology partner. And we'll end with the Q&A. So for those of you who are not very familiar with Morph 3D, we are a market leader in metal AM production. Morph 3D founded back in 2015, headquartered in El Segundo, California. And the focus of the company from the birth was really providing services
Brian,
to aerospace.
Can I interrupt you? Can I interrupt you for 1 second? We cannot see your PowerPoint, so we need to share your screen.
Oh, you cannot. Okay, interesting.
Take a second. Yeah.
Let me go through it again.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we're good now.
Thanks for reminding me. So this was the content, and this is basically my first slide. So as of April 2021, Nikon is a majority shareholder of Morph 3D. The company focus is providing solution in engineering, metal additive manufacturing, and advanced manufacturing, focused on aerospace, defense, and aviation industries. Some of the qualification of the company listed here, like AS9100, ISO 9001, we're ITAR registered, NADCAP accredited under the welding, and NIST CMMC compliant. As I said, most of the company's focus is around partnering with the aerospace and defense industry. Some of the application you can see here, like the missile hypersonics, heat exchangers, combustion chambers, or complex assembly in those applications. One of the very, I think, challenging application, probably the audience coming from aerospace industry recognize that is aircraft, rotorcraft, when you have structures or fatigue, fracture critical components, getting into the complex ducting systems. And of course, commercial engines, propulsion systems, and satellites where, you care about weight, going to the lightweighting, doing a lot of topology optimization, getting complex assemblies and making structures that can heavily reduce the weight or increase the performance. We are, as I said, headquartered in El Segundo, California, but we expanded into a 90,000 square foot facility in Long Beach, California. So the idea of the company is moving from being, a build to print and just a part manufacturer all the way to industrializing additive manufacturing and providing a production system. Being from, making parts based on the print all the way to be a technology partner. And there is a process to go through that. And the reason that it's important to look at this is when we're moving to industrialization, we have to look at industrializing additive manufacturing holistically. It's not just about a platform. It's not just about design. It's not just about the material. We should look at it holistically. And certainly using sustainable materials and understanding the material supply chain and how it impacts the whole industrialization process is critical. And this is where we basically start thinking about what kind of sustainable materials are out there and how our industry basically perceive sustainability and perceive the solutions that are out there with respect to the sustainable sourcing of materials. And very specifically, our focus is laser powder bed fusion and some DED that I will show you, just a snapshot of that. As I said, Nikon is a majority shareholder of Morph 3D, and we are very fortunate to be able to have access and use Nikon's advanced digital manufacturing technologies in that industrialization process. I would like to actually grab attention of the audience to some of these technologies that we currently have, and we have capability basically to provide as part of the industrialization of advanced manufacturing. One of these is merely DED, and this is a laser meister system that is commercially available, developed and produced by Nikon. This is a very precise repair with powder fed DED technology. There is again precision subtractive manufacturing, which gives a very high precision of milling and machining, especially if you're talking about very hard material to machine like ceramics, or you want a very precise machining. The other very interesting technology that can add a lot of value in collaboration in conjunction with additive manufacturing is the Riplet technology, which is basically came from kind of a bio-inspired technology, if you will. It comes from the shark skin technology and shark skin, and this is a technology that you add a pattern through a 3D functional micro patterning system, and that patterning can reduce a lot of drag and friction, so that enhances the function of assemblies and sub-assemblies at the system level. And of course, using the vision and control when it comes to robotics or building large structure. So these are all together. The technology, the platform, our know-how, understanding of the market, our industry, and the material go hand in hand when we're talking about industrialization. So with this, I would like actually to ask my my friend and colleague, Jamie, to give you some background about 6K.
Thank you, Behrang. Much appreciated. So a little bit about the history of 6K. Most of you probably on this webinar and in this space recognize us as somebody who produces powder, AM powder from sustainable sources, but there's actually much more to the 6K story than that. It's only recently that we emerged into the additive manufacturing powder market. We're actually much more than that. We're a fully integrated scrap processor and have been doing so for about 30 years in the legacy of the business. So beyond just converting some of these scrap sources to powder, which we also process other types of scraps, solid scraps, particulate scraps, and have been doing so for 30 years and put those into other value streams. Not everything is suitable for powder. That's that can be quite obvious. But what we do is very hard is try to look at our different sources of scrap streams and put those strictly to the powder business. And the installation of our plasma unimelt technology is what enables that step from more traditional scrap processing into the upcycling of some of these streams to premium AM powders. Behrang, you can go to the next one. Our original process was that we have been doing for 30 years is upcycling of waste tie from subtractive manufacturing, mostly from the surface preparation of wrought materials. That that titanium in that form is very hazardous. It was previously mostly just burned and put back into landfills. Our process allows the upcycling of that from basically a complete waste source into a material that can be compressed into a compact and used as a additive for primary aluminum processing. And you see the second step in that process sort of has a gray box around it. And that's sort of where we can take, that's sort of where we develop the process to take particulate material, that we have particulate materials which can be converted via plasma spheritization into a premium AM powder. So that particular part of the process actually is what facilitates this move from a scrap source, an otherwise waste source, to a premium AM powder. You can flip to the next one. Again, the Unimelt technology is the core of the technology for the AM powder production. It's a microwave-based plasma system. For those of you who might be used to other traditional plasma systems, which are inductively coupled plasma systems, the microwave-based system in itself has some advantages in that it's actually a little bit lower temperature, and it's a lot more uniform temperature. So that allows us a broad processing window for a variety of different materials, all the way from aluminum to some refractory metals. In particular, what we're talking about here today, the qualification of 718 from sustainable sources. We're taking that material as an engineered feedstock and putting it through the Unimelt. The Unimelt is termed a spheritization process because we are not doing any atomization in there. We're simply doing a transformation of the particle from an irregular shape. It can be a variety of different irregular shapes to a perfectly spherical powder particle. So obviously this creates some angst in the quality world, because how do you assure that this process can produce a clean material? You're starting from a scrap source. There's some stigma to that. We do have a full-scale production facility now making powders that is near the Burgettstown, or that is in Burgettstown, which is about 20 miles outside of Pittsburgh. Today's campus, which is in the bottom left, consists of not only our traditional legacy alloys processing, particulate processing systems, but also a fully integrated powder facility. The middle, sorry, Brian, go back one more. The middle picture there is our future expansion. By the end of 2023, we'll have doubled out our capacity here at the Burgettstown facility. And we also have just opened 10,000 square feet of additional manufacturing processing, which is aimed specifically at processing the particulate scrap to prepare it for the Unimelt conversion, Unimelt spheritization conversion. You can go ahead to the next one. So a lot of questions about the quality of this type of material from sustainable sources. So the building blocks of our quality is our quality management system. We've been ISO 9001 certified or accredited for nearly 20 years. We've been working towards our AS 9100 accreditation, and we expect to get that sometime in the late Q1. Go on to the next one. We have a fully integrated analytical lab on site that includes all the traditional and some non-traditional methodologies of analysis, everywhere from chemistry to the traditional particle size. But we also extensively use our SEM, our Thermo Fisher SEM, to do contamination scans and things of that nature to assure that all of our material that's going into the Unimelt is what it's supposed to be. It's the highest quality and is free of any contamination. One more. So just integrating all of that quality system into our production process, it amounts to, and depending on exactly what the material is, anywhere between 50 and 60 quality checks along the way. About 2/3 to 3/4 of those checks are done prior to the material ever making it to the Unimelt, which is the conversion step to the premium powder. So we're doing a lot of inspecting and assuring that our quality is good, prior to going to the UniMelt and conversion to the AM powder. And if I could go back in our relationship with Morph, which goes back about a year ago, I presented the same sort of information to Behrang, and he said, I appreciate it, and it's very nice, but how do you know your powder is actually performing well? Have you done, where's the data? And that's what sort of initiated this team effort to qualify our powders under an aerospace regime.
Yeah, this is a great basically segue. This is exactly what I want to say, that okay, now I'm looking at the value stream of AM qualified process. And obviously when you look at the part that goes through the certification process, the metallurgy, lab services, post-processing, understanding the properties and putting this all together in inspection, these are really critical. And when it comes to using a sustainable source of powder and different materials, or the materials that perceive differently, you need to spend a lot of energy and effort here, understanding the ins and outs of the material, how it responds. And the way that we have, a tool that we have is looking at data, right? So I heard that, with 6K folks, and say, great, the vision is great. This is exactly what we are also envisioning of how the sustainability should look like, how we can industrialize additive manufacturing, but here's the data and what we should do. So obviously to make this value stream of AM qualification and qualified process enable that and happen, at Morph 3D, we'll look at the material technology ecosystem in this way, that today we are very much depending on material properties and data set. And of course, in the future, we want to do more and more material informatics and use more and more data analytics. So today we are very much here. I hope that everyone can see my cursor moving. And if not, I'm just going to read that the catalog legacy data and data sets for different materials and platforms. And that can be expanded into geometry-specific properties, customer-specific data and material properties. A lot of times it's not just, tensile or fatigue, corrosion behavior, for example. And all the way when it gets to, some specific parts that needs to go through the certification process at the MMPDS or MMPDS level of data set generation. What through all these activities, bringing new alloy development, developing sustainable in qualifying sources, working on novel alloys, bringing in more and more material informatics, doing working with academia, government and institutes, is really the goal is implementing the technologies, implementing data science, implementing in situ monitoring, physics-based modeling to do this process structure property relationship that actually can enable us not to go, not to be heavily depending on data and creating material properties through an old school make and break. And for that, again, Morph 3D, we developed a metallurgy center of excellence that basically go through all the aspects of material testing analysis, from powder characterization to microstructure to property measurement and some heat treatment at the R&D level, which basically completes the full cycle of material testing. And of course, we recognize that we can't do all this alone. So we need to basically have partners, right? We have done some materials processing. We have successfully printed and processed different types of aluminum alloys, copper alloys, titanium alloys, and nickel alloys. We have some data, legacy data. We're working with our partners basically on developing some new materials like aluminum 7050 RAM2, advanced high-strength aluminum alloys like Constellium CP1, HT1. We're working with Ecosphere on unique aluminum alloys, working on high-temperature materials. But really, I think the essence of being able to use right material on the right platform with the right process to provide that industrialization is partnership in collaboration. And because of that, you probably heard a lot of activity around, most 3D partnering with ASTM, Center of Excellence on the Consortium for Material Data and Standardization. We are a strategic partner of Constellium on commercializing and qualifying their CP1 material, part of the America Makes now. And very importantly, relevant to this webinar is our partnership, which was the first basically material partnership that we put together working with 6K on qualifying sustainable powder. And we started with nickel 718 and expanded to 625 and hopefully going to other materials that we will announce later. So before starting the process, I think this is a good time that we actually pause and again ask our audience the second poll. And Brad, if you will, please.
Yep, so this is the second of our 2 polls. So please take a second and tell us what you think the most important factor is when evaluating metal powder for additive manufacturing.
And this is, I'm very curious to now, knowing the audience diversity, understanding this is going to be very interesting.
Okay. Do you have a guess as to what you think is going to be the?
No, I don't want to guess.
You don't want to guess?
I want to see data.
Okay. All right, here we go. So consistency at 46%, so far and away the most important factor, followed by mechanical properties at 26%, then chemistry composition. Cost is all the way down at the bottom there. Very interesting. And very few people filled out others, so this is a pretty good data set.
Excellent.
No surprise there.
No, there's no surprise. This is actually great, and this is how you will see the flow of the next few slides. So consistency is important, and that was our first question as well. Okay, how do you know that your material is consistent? What kind of data you have? And this is where my colleague Jamie started talking about, and then how we took it and to start doing the qualification process to generate data with respect to, again, powder and mechanical property. Okay, let's go to the next slide, Jamie.
So reasonably well is, or reasonable to the poll is consistency is important. This is something that this is the data that we put forth in front of Behrang to say that, our powder is consistent. We, as I talked about before, we go to great lengths to assure that the input materials are what they are what they're supposed to be. And by having a certain level of control of the input material into the spheritization process, it results in a great deal of consistency on the other side of the process. We can probably control PSD without yield penalty far better than some traditional methods of manufacture of powders are. But also, in our chemistry, by selection of the appropriate raw materials and vetting through those raw materials, we could also be very consistent with the chemistry. So some information on the left about chemistry consistency in terms of your interstitial chemistry, the major control, all fairly tight in terms of standard deviation across. This is a sample of around 25 or 26 lots. They were at the time it was a running tally of lots. The same is true with PSD. Very tight chemistry on your 10, 50, and 90, and the amount of -15 in there. And then of course that translates as well because of the high level of sphericity in the resultant powder, the AD, very tight AD range, and very tight Hall flow range as well. So we pride ourselves again in the consistency of the powder that we're making. That is because we're controlling our inputs, and we also have a process by which we're converting to a pretty standard high spherical powder with minimal satellites and anything that can restrict or change flow and AD.
Very good. And once we saw these results, we said that, okay, so what kind of approach we need to basically take to look at this powder and qualify it? And it's kind of different, we didn't just jump into doing, okay, we make a bunch of coupons and test them and, create data. We actually step back and say, okay, so there is good consistency. We see the data, but how about actually go a little bit deeper and do the powder analysis and look at the result of the CT of the powder. So we take a gas atomized nickel 718 that it's kind of some of our legacy data is coming from this, and took the 6K nickel 718 and of course 625, but today we talk about 718. And basically using an Icon CT scan technology and equipment, we started CT the powder. And the results was really, really surprising. Again, really the 6K powder showed, from the powder particulates, individual powder particulates, not lots and lots or batch to batch that we saw the results from Jamie, is really consistent. And again, interestingly, we observed up to 2x less porosity, powder porosity. The porosity is in a trap in a powder than 6K additive. And again, this probably goes back to the nature of the technology, which started with kind of solid particulate and then spheroidize that through their patented technology. Again, this was interesting, and again, looking at much more detail than just mechanical property. Of course, next we started putting together a build layout for a qualification process. As you can see, a lot of coupons here, a lot of tensile coupons and millography coupons in both horizontal and vertical directions, and of course fatigue. And we basically said, okay, so we have to not only just doing the one heat treat condition, but also we have to do the as printed at the end heat treated condition. Again, both as printed surfaces and machine. And this process in this kind of number of coupons will help us developing a confidence and a material performance, and set a right baseline. Once we have a customer that want to go through a rigorous qualification process, we basically can provide that kind of minimum statistically viable data set that proves that this material is working same or better than the legacy nickel 718 other gas atomized material that we have. For this activity, we use an EOS M404 with the 40 micron layer thickness. This is kind of a snapshot of tensile coupons after testing. Basically nothing special here, but just kind of showing how we look at it. And this is the heat treatment that we have used for folks who are kind of curious about the heat treatments. Obviously, solution aging for the nickel 718 based on AMS 5663. So this is interesting here, mechanical properties, and we're only showing here, for the sake of time, the tensile properties of heat treated in machine. As you can see, the UTS, yield, elongation and reduction of area, it actually very well surpassed the minimum requirements as a standard, and also our legacy data. We haven't put the legacy data line here, but all of them basically met and exceed the legacy data that we had with respect to the mechanical properties. Again, like these are average, you can see the standard deviation. One of the things that was very interesting through these many coupons that we have tested, basically we see a very tight scatter of data, or very tight data set with very low scatter, and this is good. This is again adding into the confidence with respect to the consistency. The next, we did fatigue testing as well. This is again R-1 fatigue testing, and we took those machined and non-machined samples, and we did a fatigue test. Some of these are runouts. It's not that it stops it actually. We stopped it after 1.5 million cycle. we don't want to continue more, but this obviously they could continue more and more. So it's again very interesting results here that pretty much met and exceed the fatigue performance of the expected in the industry for nickel 718 additively manufactured in our legacy data. And of course, you can see the as-printed surfaces, the as-printed machine, not machined coupons, obviously have a debit for obvious reasons. That also, we started looking at the surface finish by building coupons, different overhang angles, and obviously, nothing that's out of our expectation with respect to surface finish and also expected performance because of that surface finish. And actually, some of our observation is the 6K powder showed consistently better surface finish than our legacy materials and legacy data that we have. And that can go back to a more tighter control of the PhD process. Okay, so probably spending here talking about why Morph3D would be a technology partner for the audience. Obviously, we have a thought process of how we want to industrialize additive manufacturing, how we want to move from making part to the production system, and we know that for that we need to have partners. So there are technology partners in our ecosystem. We partner with Siemens, for example, Raynaud post-processing, Silicon, Volkmann on powder management, AMCM, and SLM solution. Obviously now SLM is part of the bigger Nikon family. So here's a snapshot of kind of machines that you will see in Morph3D ecosystem. The large format NXG system with 12 laser, large format AMCM M4K machines with 4 lasers that goes to 1 meter. Our M404s and fleets of EOS machine, as well as new SLM 500 machines. And these are kind of powder bed, but there are some DED powder fed systems, as well as the subtractive, and of course benefiting from the CT scanning and inspection and NDI with the Nikon technology. But these are only tools. The process is we go through a very clear understanding of our customer wants and needs, understanding critical qualities for the parts, and go through a digitalization workflow. And the thought process is making sure that we can automate the manufacturing and bringing the technology to the hand of our partners and our customers. So with that, I hope that you could get a feeling that how the process for qualification in a production environment is basically is handled with respect to this 6K in Morph3D collaboration. And I think with this, we want to have an Q&A.
Very good. Thank you for a really fine presentation. A lot of good feedback already from the audience. And as we might expect, we got a lot of questions from the audience too. So we will do our best to get to all your questions in the 20 minutes or so remaining. So first question, I'll just take them in the order we got them. So in 3D micro patterning, what are the most effective methods used to achieve that?
Yeah, I think that question, I will take it. So the Riplet technology is basically using micro patterning by kind of a laser ablation, and to have the most efficient patterns, basically you can use some modeling in simulation to efficiently design your pattern based on your requirement. And if someone has interest, please send send me an email here. You can find my email, so we can actually have a more detailed discussion.
What powder materials have been qualified by Morph 3D so far for production?
With 6K, we're working on 625 and 718. But I think there are some other discussion that we probably do some other materials as well.
So talking about consistency, can you define consistency, and isn't that really just an overall term for the powder? Or talk a little bit more about what you're looking for when you use that word consistency.
Jamie, do you want to take this?
Sure. So we define consistency as the consistent nature of the output of our material. So we're looking for tight ranges on any of the things that are typically measured in the industry. So you saw in the presentation, AD, flow. We're trying to control the interstitials. We understand are important to our customers, but I also toss it back to you, Behrang, and say, what do you feel like is consistent? I mean, we hear flow a lot as a general measurement, and I know there's some differing opinions on how you even measure flow. Each machine maybe finds it a little bit different, so a Hall flow maybe doesn't capture everything.
Yeah, we look actually at the end product as well. So, and from the world of materials, and again, looking at the data, end product would be your, material performance. If you're talking about like, tensile properties or fatigue or surface roughness, because these will basically end up to be in a part, and that part needs to have some level of performance. And are we consistently producing materials with the minimum material property requirements? And that it basically, create a part that part needs to have some certain, life expectancy or performance expectancy. So in Morph 3D, we have a database of, again, legacy data. And in some cases, these are going to be a few thousand data points. So just look at it from like an SPC, statistical process control, and how over a time period, over a reuse period, over a work order period, how these properties are fluctuating and changing. And this is the minimum maximum that we want to see this property. If this is consistently within this boundary, we call it consistent. And this is from the outcome rather than what is going in. Of course, we check what material is going in with respect to as you said, like chemistry, flowability, particle size distribution, and of course that's the first gate to define the consistency. But really, the rest is coming from the performance and the output.
Very good. All right, thank you. So similarly then, can you define sustainability and what that means when it comes to metal powder? How do you define sustainability? How do you achieve it and qualify it?
Yeah, I think we had to put Jamie's slides on the life cycle assessment and sustainability study that they did. You did it with Fraunhofer, right?
Yeah, actually the one is the one that's available publicly is Foresight Management did it. We define sustainable by basically not having to take anything else out of the ground to make the next set of products, and having that sort of circular economy available to us. In addition to that, the consumption or the carbon footprint of the process itself. So besides getting the benefit of using only scrap to make the products, you also have the benefit in general, the carbon footprint of a less energy intensive process. And that really comes in a couple of different forms. If you look against traditional processing, there's a lot less inert gas consumption. And there's also the highest energy intensive process for us the energy is applied a bit more directly to the final product that you want. So you're not contending as much with yield loss as some other of the conventional.
Thank you. Is it possible to produce Inconel 718 powders with a oxygen less than 100 ppm using your process?
The answer to that is yes. It's a very abbreviated answer. There's a little more to it because it depends largely on what you start with. But yes, we've proven that we can do that on a regular basis.
What about stress rupture tests? Have you done those on any of the Inconel 718 coupons?
We have not done a stress rupture test on the nickel 718. Those are kind of, again, probably more customer specific, application specific. So we basically only did the fatigue and tensile and metallurgical testing.
Surface finish, how do you measure surface finish?
Surface profilometry.
Is 6K producing the aluminum silicon 10 mg powder?
We have done it, but we are not commercially producing it at the moment.
This is a good question. How much does Morph 3D rely on the powder manufacturer's characterization, and how much do you do then for your own verification?
We definitely rely on powder manufacturer, and we ask, the certs from the powder manufacturer, but we also do testing. The Morph 3D, now we have the capability to test in-house, but we basically outsource testing for the batch of the powders that we receive or needed to be tested. And we still continue doing the outsourcing of testing.
Questions are still coming in, so I hope you guys are up for a lot more questions. This person is interested in why you process only as-built, non-HT, non-heat-treated coupon.
Sorry, I didn't get the question. Can you repeat it again?
Why you process only as-built coupons?
No. We process as-built and heat-treated. And if you recall, I showed those heat-treated and as-built coupons, and we only show here the result of the heat-treated, just for the sake of time, but same for the as-built. And there's no kind of as-built, let's say, standard, but we have as-built legacy data, and it met the legacy data that we have.
This question talks about sieving. Is sieving of air classification? Sieving of air classification a part of the powder production workflow? Does that make sense?
So that's ours, and it is part of the workflow. It's generally, just from a traditional sense for us anyway, it's a little bit different in that we're not taking a large distribution and trying to get only the desired out, because we're only really putting the desired in and desired out. There is a small amount of agglomeration that happens within our process, so we sometimes have to take a little bit of oversize out, but that's all. It's fairly limited.
Okay. And the micron particle size available for that process?
For us, we have done we've done each of the major sizes, which is the binder jet typical size 5 to 25, and then on up to the DED cut.
What about humidity? What effect does humidity have on the powder, as well as oxygen and hydrogen ingress?
So humidity does affect, it depends largely on the grade. I don't know how much it affects nickel, but some of the other alloys, it certainly does. Oxygen, in terms of like the flowability of it, we haven't seen much of a difference, higher or lower, but it's not, we haven't studied it in depth, at least from with our powder.
The question has to do with spheroidization, and I think he just wanted me to say that word. Does this spheroidized output need sieving as well as atomized powder output?
So the spheroidized powder they both definitely need some sieving. The spheroidized output is much less. You're losing much less to the sieving process. It's just to get out any agglomerates, whereas in atomization you're cutting usually both fines and oversize out quite significantly.
So the question goes back to sustainability. Do you actually have data on the sustainability impact of your powder compared to, the more typical virgin powder, energy consumption or CO2 equivalent, whatever?
Yes, that's in the LCA, and the person who asked that question, I think that's in the handouts. So there's a summary of that, and of course you can email us if you need more deep dive details. But yes, it's quantified.
Yeah, both these guys' email addresses are on the screen here, so if you want to follow up with them, feel free, obviously, to do that. Whoops, I just deleted a question. Sorry.
I think we learned that we have to put that one slide, right?
Yeah, I guess so. That's my fault.
So the scrap feedstock, it's currently metal shavings. So is the stretch goal solid pieces or any metal turned into powder? Talk a little bit more about, I guess, the stretch goal, to use this person's terminology.
Yeah, I mean, the feedstock sources. So we actually have a variety of different feedstock sources. We showed some examples there of some mechanically milled material. We use a variety of different things. We used AM powder. Really, the point is there's kind of two things that govern us. One is that the incoming scrap source is clean. We've gone to great lengths to partner with folks and identify those streams that are clean. And let's face it, the production of super alloy scrap is far more than what the needs are today for AM powder processing. So what our goal is right now is to serve the market with the best, and then continue to develop ways as the AM market grows to bring in new different types of sources that we can use. But we do use turnings, used AM powder, off-size AM powder, even to some extent some other forms that are small enough to the closer to size the better at this moment in time. But yes, the goal is to expand that in both the size and the different streams that we can use.
All right, they keep coming in. We got about 6 minutes left, but we'll obviously go over a couple minutes if we need to. So we talked, or the title really it talks about qualification. So the question has to do with that. Are we qualifying for a specific part, a specific customer? What exactly what was your end goal, Behrang, with the qualification?
No, this is a very good question, and I was expecting someone to ask that. Yes, I mean general qualification doesn't necessarily mean a lot, right? And in qualification is for a part for an application, obviously. But again, something that is very important, and I think your audience, our audience, basically in a poll also indicated that we need to see consistency. We need to see data, okay? And there should be some minimum, again, data that generated through a systematic process in a production environment with all the controls and machine, right? That builds that confidence, right? So really this practice was about, okay, so you have good control in your chemistry. Okay, now let us basically go through our process, looking in depth on a powder and how the powder looked like, and then using our process to create coupons and create builds and test many coupons and develop a statistical data set and do the analysis and say that, okay, this material, because we have qualified nickel 782 platforms and we have data sets, this material actually is equivalent or better than what is our legacy data and what is the standard basically looking. But not just few coupons that, for example, has been printed without really, a right pedigree. So this activity is making sure that we have a right pedigree, we have right amounts of data, that we can draw a conclusion that this powder, this material, is meeting and exceeding the minimum requirements and the available data that we have in our database. But absolutely correct. I mean, the term qualification, this material is qualified for this part. Generalization is not necessarily a right thing.
Okay, good. What is the smallest batch size, Jamie, that 6K can make, particularly for alloy development and testing is the question.
Yeah, it largely depends on if it's alloy development and testing. We've done as small as 10 kgs. It kind of depends on what exactly the material is, but we do have the capability at our R&D facility to do smaller batches.
And then how many rounds of testing would need to be completed before you can confidently say a material is qualified?
Can you repeat the question?
How many rounds of testing need to be completed before you would be able to confidently say that a material is qualified?
Again, it depends. If, for example, we go through a MMPDS terminology, you can say I have the S basis level, or now with the additive C basis, D basis level, and these are different lots of powder in different machines, and you have to build 30 coupons or 100 coupon or 300 coupons. It really depends, but here we basically look at and say that, okay, we need to have some minimum 10 size, a minimum fatigue, the number of coupons to be tested. So we can basically call it, okay, call it qualified in kind of our terminology, not necessarily qualified for, a customer specifically. So this is giving us a platform, giving us competency that can be presented and can be shown to a customer that looking for qualifying a part with this material, and then go through a qualification process that either dictated or designed by that specific customer, or we collaboratively working together to develop that qualification process.
Good, thank you. Have you looked at the aging of the powders? Is powder reusability the same as with the gas atomized powder?
Aging, probably, I'm not sure if I'm getting it correct. Probably they meant reuse of the powder, meaning that the powder goes through the cycle of reusing, or just aging, meaning sitting. If that individual can comment that sitting, for extended period of time. If the question is reuse, we haven't gone through the reuse. With respect to the aging, like the powder sitting in, if you guys, Jamie, have seen anything change in powder, I'm not expecting, but I mean.
No, we have not, and I think largely the feedback that we've gotten from customers so far is that it behaves pretty similarly. We just oftentimes can start with some lower oxygen, which is oftentimes the limiting factor.
Ray, would you want to share your future plans for testing additional batches of 6K powder?
As I said, I mean, we are in the latest phase of the nickel 625. And we'll be able to have a similar kind of, I would say, webinar or a technology presentation, co-presentation on both 718 and 625 results. Yes, and we're looking at other materials as well, but since it's not yet publicly available, we're not going to comment on that.
Fair enough. Jamie, what's the ratio of scrap to virgin material? I guess specifically for aerospace grade powders.
So there is no, currently there is no virgin material put in as the model. It's all scrap. There are options to do other things, but right now the product that we're promoting is a scrap product, and that's the one that Behrang tested, and that's what our model is. That's the sustainability model.
are you able to tweak the composition of the material during the manufacturing process?
So that, I mean, that's one of the downsides to our process is not generally accepted. There are methodologies for doing that, but not, you know, we are pretty locked into whatever the scrap is that we start with.
All right, well, unfortunately, we have reached the end of our scheduled time slot. We have several more questions. We will ask our presenters at 6K and Morph 3D to address these questions and maybe a follow-up email. Apologize for the time, but boy, we sure got a lot of great questions. So thank you to our attendees for great participation. And of course, thank you, Jamie and Behrang, for really a great presentation, very interesting and informative. And again, to our audience, thank you for attending. We hope you found it to be a valuable experience. If you've not downloaded the materials that are available, the handouts, there is a handout tab on the go-to panel. So we encourage you to go ahead and download those documents. And again, please remember that an archive of the program will be available soon. From us, you'll receive an email when it is, and you'll be able to review what you learned today and perhaps share it with others in the organization. So again, thank you, Behrang and Jamie, for a great presentation, and to our audience for attending. Have a great rest of your day. You can go ahead and close your browsers now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.